And now let's introduce our first panelists. Our first author is adept at bringing humor to even tragic situations. Her book title is Maggie, or A Man and Woman Walk into a Bar. And it may be the only book I've noticed that has a semicolon in the title. Katie Yee is a writer from Brooklyn. She's received fellowships from the Center for Fiction, the Asian American Writers Workshop, and Kundiman. Her work has appeared in the Los Angeles Review of Books, No Tokens, The Believer, Epiphany, and LitHub. By day, she works at the Brooklyn Museum, and by night, she writes, usually under the watch of her judgmental rescue dog, Ollie. And I'm not the one who called Ollie judgmental. That was Katie's words. And Judy, one of our most esteemed editors, is senior vice president and publisher of the newly revived Summit Books imprint, where she is building an internationally relevant list. Internationally relevant is so important right now as our world gets more and more interconnected and global, and we need to understand people better. She was at Little Brown for 26 years, 12 as editor-in-chief, where she published I Am Malala, Room, Where Did You Go, Bernadette, Julie and Julia, among so many other wonderful books. Her forthcoming titles for Summit include books by Emma Donoghue, Ayat Akhtar, Peter Godwin, Daniel Kelman, Heather Rose, and Lauren Redness, as well as memoirs by notable figures such as legendary actor Anthony Hopkins and Nobel Prize winner Nadia Murad. There are a bunch of magnificent debut novels coming as well, including Katie's. So now I'm going to ask Katie and Judy to start their microphones and cameras, which you've done, and come on to the digital stage. And Judy, really looking forward to finding out how you guys came up with the title, among other things.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us here. I had nothing to do with the title. I had been at Little Brown for a long time and started at Summit with this amazing team. A manuscript came into my inbox with this title, which, I mean, how could you not love? Already, I was so intrigued. And I was going to lunch and I thought, well, I love the agent, Duval Osteen. I'll definitely read this manuscript tonight. And I came back from a lunch and my entire team was literally standing at the door. They had already read the book, were hysterically in love with it, and said, Judy, we're buying this book. So, of course, I went home that night, fell in love with the book. And I think part of the reason I wanted to tell that story is publishing is not just about the editor. It is also about a team. And I've been so lucky to have this very small, intimate team at Summit. But so much of what we do, all of us, is the teamwork. This novel knocked my socks off. And in a way, could not believe what an old soul this writer is. So Katie, I wanted to start because there's a lot of people who would have read the book, to just explain a little bit about what the book is and then about the origin story without giving away too much. I want everyone to read it. You will read it and fall in love. But I think there's a way to talk about it that doesn't give away too much, I hope.
Absolutely. And thank you for that lovely introduction. And before I dive in, I just want to take a quick second to thank everyone for being here. I think it's been a really bleak week for many of us. And it's just really comforting and wonderful to be in this virtual room full of people who really care about storytelling and voices. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. Maggie, or A Man and Woman Walk into a Bar. It's a little book, so hopefully it doesn't take too long to read. It can be read while you're out to lunch. It's going to sound bleak, but bear with me. It's a story about a woman who discovers that her husband is having an affair with a woman named Maggie, pretty much at the same time that she is diagnosed with breast cancer. Bleak away. In a fun way, she names the tumor after her husband's lover. She starts talking to it. I was really obsessed with her children's bedtime stories. The narrator is Asian American, her husband is white, so she has biracial children, and she just becomes really fixated on infusing their bedtime stories with Chinese mythology and trying to make them laugh and understand and fall in love with their shared culture. Then the origin story for this, I feel like I was thinking a lot about how weird it is to have a body. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not very good at having a body. I don't give it enough sleep. I'm horrible at going to the doctor. I eat a lot of spaghetti. I'm not good at it. If I could just be like a mind moving from room to room, I would be. But I think there are a lot of really weird experiences in life that kind of force you back into your body, especially in a woman's life. So I'm thinking about breast cancer. Breast cancer runs in my family. The process of going into those screening rooms and the waiting rooms and and everything that comes with that. That's like one instance of something that puts you back into your body. Another one being motherhood, right? Carrying a child and then giving birth to said child. I started taking this story very seriously in the middle of the pandemic when a lot of things were happening, namely in New York City, a lot of violence against Asian Americans. And that was very startling to me. I grew up in New York City. I've always felt really safe. And I feel like I really started to think about whether or not I could bring children into the world who looked like me, who I couldn't protect from these like larger wounds of racism or diagnosis of breast cancer or divorce. And I kind of put all those things together. I feel like I crafted this narrator that I thought was resilient, and I kind of wanted to lovingly test her and see what came out of it.
What's amazing to me is how brilliantly you unpack and unpick these. There's so much tragedy. There's also grief and loneliness and loss and divorce and cancer. And yet there's so much humor. Talk about the tragic comedy and how you, I mean, were you reading books like it? How did you pull that off? They feel like they're just woven together in such a way. 1 minute you're laughing, 1 minute you're crying. Their humor, I think, throughout keeps everything so buoyant. But that's a tricky thing to do. And I think you've done it so brilliantly.
Thank you. Thank you. There are so many books that have paved the way for this, like Nora Ephron's Heartburn. She toes the line of tragedy and comedy so wonderfully. Children's books also really toe that line well, because we want to infuse children with the idea of resilience and hope, and that comes with humor. I'm thinking about books like A Series of Unfortunate Events or Alexander and The Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. I feel like those are really good life lessons that we can keep with us into adulthood. Experiences are never just one color or one thing, right? I have chuckled at funerals and cried at baby showers. Tragicomedy feels really true to life to me in that way. I see so
As
much
well, because when you
growth.
said children's books, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just got so excited about an idea that I hadn't thought of before, which is because the narrator, you never name her. She doesn't have a name. Maggie, of course, is the name of the woman her husband is leaving her for, and is also the name she gives her tumor the name Maggie, because she's sort of like, if you've got your Maggie, then I'm going to have my Maggie. And, you know, I think in life as women, as friends, that sort of dynamic is so interesting. But more than I'm thinking about it, in children's literature, there's often an unnamed character, or you don't know who the narrator is. So anyway, that's not really a question. It's more just an observation. And I wanted to ask you, because I'm your editor and it's your first novel, just in terms of the editing process, what it's been like for you. No need to say anything positive about me. I just think for other writers and for the people who are listening, what have you learned? What's that process been like? You know, suddenly having this book in the hands of so many people who are giving you thoughts and feedback.
Oh my goodness. Well, okay. First of all, I only have a few things to say about you, Judy. And I kind of
Didn't sound like I was fishing.
no. And I do want to echo what you said at the very beginning. Like, so much of this process is about teamwork, right? It's about our relationship and our relationship with everyone else in the entire team, right? There's book designers, publicists, and all the wonderful assistants and librarians and booksellers that will hopefully read and take part in this process. I think the thing that I am having the hardest time doing is I feel like up until this point, it has been easy to feel like, oh, I just have this silly little project that I'm doing by myself. Now it feels incredible and surreal to have this phenomenal bunch of people rally behind it. I'm very grateful.
Well, to me, it's really a book about a woman who, with all of these awful things happening, is rewriting her story, is married, has always thought, I mean, it starts in this very comic way. And yet it's really about this tremendous loss, and the rug is pulled out from under her. Not only is her husband leaving her, but she's diagnosed with cancer. And yet she manages to find a path forward. That to me is the reason why this book is going to resonate with so many readers, not just young readers, but I think for me as a kind of old, not to age myself, but, you know, and I think I said that to you when we first sat down, you know, I think it's a book that's going to speak generationally to women in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. Are there some writers aside from Nora Ephron who you were thinking about when you wrote? I think it's always great to hear from writers who they love and who they're reading.
Yes, definitely. But wait, can I jump back a little bit to what
Yes, of course. Sorry.
what you just said? Yes, definitely a story about loss, but I think also a story about, let me see if I can tie this all together. A story about friendship, right? The narrator, her best friend, Darlene, she's a huge part of the story. I feel like she brings a lot of buoyancy into it. She helps it from being too tragic. I think she brings a lot of humor into it. You asked about books that I love that I've also been thinking about. I'm thinking like Department of Speculation by Jenny Offal is really incredible. There's this other book that's wonderful, The Harpy by Megan Hunter. These are books that do this phenomenal job of capturing the disintegration of like a marriage. I admire these books so much that I see. Are we being played off the screen? I'm gonna finish this sentence really quick. Wonderfully, they capture this idea of like a marriage falling apart. And I think in all these books that I admire, I often find myself thinking though, where are their best friends? It was really important to me to incorporate that aspect of female friendship coming into it.
Wow, that was an interesting ending to the conversation. As the title might suggest, Katie's novel is really funny. There are tons of witty gems embedded throughout. And one of them is at the beginning of the novel where, in order to impress someone, her friend picks up a copy of Jeanette Winterson's Written on the Body. Like, who hasn't done that?
One of my favorite.
I know. So thank you very much.
Mm.
And
Well,
we'll
thank you.
move on. Yeah. Thanks, Judy. You're amazing.
Thank you. Can't
Thank
wait
you.
to hear everybody else.
Same.